For example, the whole notion that it was and is, I guess, still Osama bin Laden's network. Well, in reality, what happened, as you'll recall, when Osama bin Laden's videos became public, yes, in the same way that when the Unabomber in the United States wanted to get his information across, he went to the New York Times. And why did he do that? He did that because of the incredible popularity and reach of the New York Times. He didn't give it to the New York Times because the New York Times was sympathetic to his actions. And in the same way, Al Jazeera Arabic towers over its competition in the Arab world in terms of audience reach and audience popularity. So clearly, if you're going to release videos, you would give them to the #1 station. I've been there now for 8 months. I'm part of a daily meeting at 1 o'clock, which is essentially a meeting between Al Jazeera Arabic and Al Jazeera English. We have about 3 or 4 people there, including a couple who speak flawless Arabic. I'm learning Arabic, but I do not speak it well at all. And the incredible reality of the people who work on Al Jazeera Arabic is most of them were trained at the BBC, and many of them actually speak English better than I do. So the meeting is, in fact, in English. And I've been amazed and impressed since day one about how rigorous and how stringent they are in terms of the discussion of what gets on their channel and what doesn't get on their channel. So I think that, if anything, one of the joys of realizing that when this channel is available in households, as it is, again, as I point out, in more than 100 countries, that the response from the public is generally quite favorable. It's not Al Jazeera Arabic and Al Jazeera English. Are news channels. They're 24/7 news channels. It's history on the run. We make mistakes in the same way that we made mistakes at the CBC. But in terms of motivation, I really just, as somebody who's inside the beast, so to speak, I just have no patience for this idea that somehow the standards coming out of that organization are any different than the standards one finds either in Britain or in Canada. I just want to close, because I know there are a lot of issues that are central to this, not only to Al Jazeera, but more importantly, probably to the evening's theme. But I just want to kind of fill you in on the status of Al Jazeera's, situation as it relates to Canada. In 2003, there was an application for Al Jazeera Arabic to be broadcast in Canada. It needs to be sponsored. It was sponsored by a Quebec cable company called Videotron. Again, it was, I think, in hindsight, poorly organized in the sense that there really wasn't a effective group of people that spoke in defense of Al Jazeera Arabic, and the CRTC then became basically the target of various interest groups that kind of argued that there was something kind of fundamentally anti-Semitic and fundamentally anti-Israeli about the channel. So what the CRTC did in a kind of a controversial decision, it said, okay, we'll allow Al Jazeera Arabic to be carried in Canada, but on the assumption that the cable distributors would be responsible for the content, which is a bit like insisting that your local newsstand is responsible for any libel that the Economist or Maclean's or the Toronto Star. So needless to say, the cable companies turned around and refused to carry it. And the situation this is 2003, shortly after the Iraq War. We need the organized channels don't just get broadcast. They need to get approved by the CRTC, and the approval occurs after a sponsor makes the application on the channel's behalf. We're hoping, and we're just in the process of finalizing our arrangement with a sponsor, and I hope as early as the middle of next week it'll be announced that, yes, there will be an application to the CRTC on behalf of Al Jazeera Arabic. We've gotten informal assurances from the major cable and satellite distributors in Canada that if it gets the household seal of approval, and we're confident it will, because it now has 2 years of an on-air track record, and there's been no suggestion of anti-Semitism. If anything, in terms of the whole issue of the anti-Israeli bias, I think the evidence coming out of Israel is to the contrary. So we're hopeful that perhaps as early as this fall that it will be broadcast in Canada. And again, our ambition here is not to argue that it's the only thing that people should watch, but I think the glorious period we're in this post-Bush Obama period is that we're once again in a situation of where the U.S. in particular, and hopefully Canada, are engaging more with the world in a broader way. And I think we know from the incredible response to our coverage in Gaza by Americans through our website, etc., that I think that Americans are really increasingly aware that America's role in the world is something that they can only understand if they have access to news media that actually care about the coverage of world affairs. And for all of our flaws, I certainly am standing here saying that Al Jazeera English cares about the coverage of world affairs, and I'm proud that I work with so many Canadians there to make that happen. Thank you very much.